Hey everybody, this is Brian with Bear Cards 34, back with another video from the 1990 Thompson Friends Show and Tell series. This is the second to last episode of the 1990 series where we take a deep dive into the sets, the players, and the history of 1990. For me, this is a fun video because I get to kind of look back to my childhood and the nostalgic factor that goes along with collecting. And so we're going to start off today with the 1990 New England Patriots. So the year these cards came out, the Patriots had a really rough year. They went 1-15. Their head coach was Rod Rust, who passed away back in 2018. He had been a college football player at Iowa State, and for most of his career, he was an assistant coach. He was an AC for Dick Vermeil, Marv Levy, some great coaches. And in 1990, he finally got his chance, but unfortunately only won one game in 1990, and he was fired right after the season. The Patriots had been 5-11 in 89, so they were looking at a new change, and were hoping that Rust was going to be the answer to that. Unfortunately, not the case. The Patriots were actually outscored in 1990, 181 to 446. So the Patriots had the number one pick in 1991, but they traded that away. And I looked online to see who that trade was for. They picked up Eugene Lockhart, Ron Francis, and David Howard, along with the 11th overall pick, which I think was Pat Harlow, if I remember right. And that was because they were hoping to pick Rocket Ismail with the number one pick, but he went on and signed with the Argonauts in the CFL, and so they decided to trade that pick away. The Patriots did have one Hall of Famer represented in the top set, and that was Andre Tippett. And I also wanted to show his action pack card because that's one of my favorite photos from the 1990 sets. Ken O'Brien on the ground, Andre Tippett just diving for that loose ball. And while he's not a Hall of Famer, Stanley Morgan, great wide receiver, one of my favorites, that was his last time featured in a Patriots uniform. He was eventually moved over to Indianapolis, so the Topps Traded has him there. I do have one Topps Tiffany card of the Patriots. This is the Mark Wilson, who also, may be better known for playing with the Raiders. And he also played in my home state of Utah over at BYU. And they had Canadian Hall of Famer Doug Flutie, who was a part of that team as well. The Patriots played Pittsburgh at the American Bowl in Montreal. I believe they lost that game to Pittsburgh, but Pro Set made a card of that. And the Young Superstars score set had a Bruce Armstrong, just a very talented offensive lineman for many years with the Patriots. And they also had a Pro Bowler. Johnny Rembert was the Pro Bowler there. And so Fleer Stars and Stripes also did a set with the Pro Bowl player, so he was featured there as well. Now, the Patriots had a lot of players with rookie cards in 1990. There were 14 that I counted, but none of them really made much of an impact. We had players like Chris Singleton right here. He was the 8th player picked in the draft. We had Ray Agnew, who was the 10th player picked in the draft. He did go on to win a Super Bowl with the Rams. And if you can't afford TB12 rookie cards, I would suggest TH13. Tom Hudson. Tom Hudson's cards are way more, believe it or not, affordable. So, Agnew and Singleton, they did a little here and there, but just nothing too impactful if we're talking about overall impact in the NFL. Now, one of the most valuable cards of the set is this one right here, Fred Marion. One of these things is not like the other. The one on the left is referred to as the Fred Marion belt card. Now, when these cards first came out, no one was aware of it. I had no clue. It wasn't until years later that I found out about this. And basically, the story behind this is that for many years, the card on the left, the original one put out, as well as the one on the right, were considered just a common 5-cent card. No one thought much of it. But at some point, it was discovered because there were a lot of changes with Pro Set, variations, updates, and a bunch of other things. So this card right here with number 82, John Taylor, in the background on the 49ers, he's falling forward. And you can see on the card on the left, his belt came loose and is kind of falling off of him. So depending on where your mind is, you might look at that card on the left and think that might look like a large appendage, trying to get some playing time in the game. So ProSet saw this and they quietly airbrushed the image. And we don't know exactly how many cards are out there, but it is definitely a short print. It is rare. I remember when I read an article talking about this card in particular, I ran to my ProSet binder to see if I happened to have the belt card, which it was not in the binder. So I went back to my boxes, and my brother and I ripped a bunch of this stuff growing up. And I went through the boxes, and I had, I think, 8 or 9 Fred Marion cards, and one of them, the one on the left, did have the belt. Now, the card on the right, you'll see they have airbrushed that belt away. So there's no belt here. We've got the belt right there. Yeah, so that is the belt card. These are available online. At one point, I think they were selling for like $50, $70, $80, $100. You can get them cheaper than that now, but definitely one of the more expensive cards in the set. And we believe that picture was probably taken so this would have been in 1989. They did play the Patriots versus the Niners on October 22nd, so we think it's from that game. But anyway, I was very happy to at least have one of those cards. I called my brother and told him about it, and he looked through all of his cards. He did not have the belt card. So between the two of us, I bet we had 17, 18 Fred Marions and just the one with the belt. So one of the 2 rookie cards I wanted to highlight here, who did have somewhat of an impact really, was Maurice Hurst. He was a 4th-round pick back in 1989 out of Southern, where he was teammates with Hall of Famer Aeneas Williams. He played 7 years, all of those with the Patriots, and he was named to the Patriots All-90s team. That's why I wanted to give him a shout-out here. He was known for being really fast, really tough. He had 27 career interceptions, including 5 as a rookie in 1989. His son, Maurice Hurst Jr., is a defensive tackle with the Cleveland Browns, and I think he's newly acquired by the Browns. He used to play with the Raiders and the 49ers, but a talented player, Maurice Hurst, for sure. The other rookie card I want to mention is this one right here of Marv Cook. This is his only rookie card, and he would not be the only talented Patriots tight end to only be featured in one card set for their rookie during the 90s. There was another one coming up a couple of years later. He was an 88 All-American, and this is actually a Topps Traded card, by the way, not from the regular Topps set, but Topps Traded. His first year, he only had 3 catches for 12 yards, but he was still named to Pro Football Weekly's All-Rookie team. This was due to his special teams play and his blocking ability. But he went from only having 3 catches his rookie season to being a first-team All-Pro in 1991, where he was 4th in the NFL in receiving in catches with 83 catches. He spent 7 years with the Patriots. In 1994, he was with my Chicago Bears, and then he played his final year with the Rams back in 1995. But he's a 2-time Pro Bowler, 1-time All-Pro, very talented tight end. All right, next up we've got the 1990 Phoenix Cardinals. In 1989, they went 5-11, and then the year these cards came out, they went 5-11 again. Their head coach was the late Joe Bugle. He passed away a couple years back. He coached the Cardinals from 1990 to 93. There were no Hall of Famers for the Cardinals featured in the set that year. However, I do have the Topps Traded, and these are limited to 3,000 prints. This is the not Topps Traded, Topps Tiffany of Visek Ahima, who was a really talented return specialist, and he also played at BYU in my home state of Utah. They didn't have a first-round pick that year, so the rookies, well, I'll get into those in just a minute, but I wanted to show this card. So here's a player, not a Hall of Famer, but a very talented receiver for a lot of years. That's one of my favorite images as well. I love that picture, just with the in-action shot. Just love that photo. Now, despite going 5-11, both in 89 and then again this year 90, they did have some Pro Bowlers. They had Ron Wolfley, who was a special teams player, Rich Caramello, who had a great season that year as a punter, Tim McDonald, who was always very talented player as well, and then Lewis Sharp, the tackle. And then, of course, Fleer, Stars and Stripes also included cards. So we've got Camarillo, we've got Tim McDonald, and then we've got Sharp right here as well. And Camarillo also has this Fleer Insert All-Pro card. I loved getting those Fleer All-Pro cards. It felt like a hit back in the day, so those were a lot of fun to get. And Camarillo was also the NFL's punting leader in 1989, so they featured a card of him for that as well. And then right here, we've got the young superstars. That included Eric Hill, who wrote me back a letter when I was a kid, which was really nice. And it was a full-on letter, which is highlighted in one of my Blast from the Past show and tell videos. Now, one card I do want to mention right here is this Dexter Manley. On the back of the card, at one point, they included that he had been suspended part of the season for violating the NFL's substance abuse policy. And not very many of those got out. And so this one is not that. This is the corrected version. But the version that mentions his substance abuse suspension is actually a valuable card. That goes for pretty good money on eBay these days. It was taken out pretty quickly after. I don't know if Manley was upset about that or if they just realized probably not the best thing to put on one of his own cards. However, yeah, that is one of those cards to look for if you're trying to find those more rare Pro Set cards. So I mentioned they didn't have a first-round draft pick, but they did have one of the first picks of the second round, and this is a guy who they had thought was going to be quite good, Anthony Thompson. So he was the Maxwell and the Walter Camp Player of the Year. He won both of those awards at Indiana, two-time All-American, but he really didn't make it at all in the NFL, considered a pretty big bust, unfortunately. He played for 4 years. He only ran for a little over 800 yards, and his yards per carry was 3.3. It turns out that the running back, they did find a running back in that draft who was quite good. And again, he didn't have a super long career either, but Johnny Johnson right here, he was a 7th round draft pick, but he is the one who ended up making a real impact for the team. So he played at San Jose State, and again, a short career, but very impactful. When I think of Johnny Johnson, I think of the 92 Pinnacle box. I think it was 92. But anyway, he was on the cover of that. And so these are some of his, well, these are his rookie cards right here. He played well enough that he actually made the all-rookie team. He had nearly 1,000 yards. He had rushed for over 900 yards. He was the 25th running back taken in the draft, so a really impressive feat for him to come in and make such a good impact. He was eventually traded away to the Jets in 1993, and he was the team's lead MVP. He led the team in rushing and receiving. He ended up not signing with them, became a free agent. He went into the 49ers training camp, and he was waived. So he ran for 4,000 yards in 5 years, and I couldn't really find a lot about that as to what went on there. I didn't hear of any injuries or anything like that, but just suddenly his career was kind of over. Next up, we've got Ken Harvey. This is his rookie card, or rookie cards. He was a very talented outside linebacker, 12th pick of the draft in 88, but they didn't make any cards for him in 89 for some reason. He played at Cal. He spent 6 years with the Cardinals, where he was very good, and then he spent 5 years with the Washington Redskins, where he was great. 4-time Pro Bowler, made 4 straight Pro Bowls. He was part of the Washington Ring of Fame and voted for with the Redskins as one of the 80 greatest Redskins of all time. So very impactful during his time there. And I found out that he's now the author of a handful of children's books, and one of his books was illustrated by actor Terry Crews, who used to play football with him. They were teammates, actually, with the Redskins back in 1995. All right, next up we've got Ricky Proehl rookie cards. Ricky Proehl actually has a couple kids who have been in the NFL more recently. Blake Proehl has been on the Vikings roster, and then Austin Proehl has bounced around on a few practice squads, but I've seen some cards of them out there as well. Anyway, Ricky Proehl was very talented. He was known for his leaping ability and his good hands. There's an Upper Deck card where there's a really cool picture of him leaping for a photo. Anyway, he played at Wake Forest, which is the same college that my namesake Brian Piccolo went to many years earlier. And he became the school's all-time leader in receiving yards and touchdowns. He became a third-round pick by the Cardinals. He spent his first 5 years with the Cardinals, and in 1990 he was an all-rookie. He led the team in receiving despite not being a starter. So just a very talented receiver right out the gate. He had a 17-year career, so he played a long time. And he played 1 year with my Bears back in 1997. He even led the team in receiving that year, but just was with them for that short time. What he's maybe best known for is his time with the Rams. He was part of that Greatest Show on Turf, won a Super Bowl with the Rams. I think he had like a 100-yard game in the championship leading up to the Super Bowl, so he was a big part of that team. And he retired after the 2005 season, but then he came out of retirement in 2006 when one of the receivers on the Colts got injured, and so he signed on to them, and then he won another Super Bowl with the Colts. Unfortunately, the Colts beat my Bears. But yeah, very talented player. He retired with almost 9,000 career receiving yards and 669 catches. So a talented receiver for sure. Next up, we've got Tom Tupa rookie cards. So as a kid, he once won that NFL's punt, pass, and kick contest. And it makes sense because he was both a quarterback and a punter. He was a third-round pick in 1988 out of Ohio State, where he had been the starting quarterback and also an All-American punter in 1987. He started 2 games at quarterback in 1989 for the Cardinals. But by 1991, he was playing a lot more, 11 games. But he only had 6 touchdowns to 13 interceptions. In fact, in his first NFL start, he had 6 interceptions. So the Cardinals were starting to realize he maybe wasn't going to be their answer at quarterback, but he was an All-American punter. He was looking like a good punter in the NFL, so that kind of became what he transitioned into for the remainder of his career. And he played a long time. And he played for a lot of teams. He played for the Colts, the Browns, the Patriots, the Jets, the Buccaneers, the Redskins. He retired after the 2005 season, and his best year was in 1999 with the Jets, where he made a Pro Bowl and he was first-team All-Pro as a punter. He's also a Super Bowl championship with the Buccaneers, and he's part of the Patriots All-Decade team, even though he only played for them for 3 years. So he threw for 3,400 passing yards, but punting, he had almost 38,000 with a 43.4 career average. So definitely much more of a punter in the NFL, but did very well. Last up for the Cardinals is Ken McMichael. He was featured as part of Score's The Final Five. They were the final draft picks, the final 5 picks of the NFL draft that year. He was the 330th pick, and he started at cornerback for Oklahoma, but according to the back of this card, he was projected to play linebacker for the Cardinals. I couldn't find any record of him playing at all in the NFL, but I did see that he's currently an English teacher and has also coached some high school football. So kind of cool for him that he has a card made. And the last team for today, the 1990 New York Jets. In 1989, they finished 4-12. They improved to 6-10 in 1990 under coach Bruce Coslet. He was the coach for that year. It was his first of 4 years with the Jets. And notably, a defensive coordinator for the Jets back then was Pete Carroll. The young superstar was Eric McMillan, who was also the Pro Bowler there in that card. And he also has one of the Pro Set Collectabooks cards. We have a Ken O'Brien, who is also featured in that as well. And then for the Super Bowl cards, we've got Super Bowl Superman from Pro Set. That included Winston Hill, George Sauer, the receiver, Matt Snell, my guy from Utah State, a fellow Utah State Aggie, Jim Turner, for both the Jets and the Broncos. And of course, you can't forget about Joe Namath, who predicted that Super Bowl win right here. And there's also a card for Weeb Eubank, who was the part of the AFL's New York Jets. That was a shocking defeat over Baltimore, 16-7 in Super Bowl III. And Eubank had actually been fired by Baltimore 6 years earlier, and they kind of mentioned that was like a big moment for him to win that award. Next up, we're going to go on to our rookie cards. Now, Blair Thomas is considered a bust in the NFL, but I did want to mention him. And again, this kind of goes into, when we think about cards that we think are going to be a sure thing. This is one I thought Blair Thomas was going to be, I thought he was going to be like Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith. It didn't turn out that way, but I will tell you, he had a fantastic college career. At Penn State, right when he started off in college, he was part of the 86 National Championship season. And as a senior, he won the MVP of the Holiday Bowl and the MVP of the Senior Bowl. He was an 89 All-American. Everybody thought he was just going to be amazing in college, or in the NFL. And the thing was, he was the second pick of the draft. So he was really, really high pick in that draft. And that's part of where the problem is. But I will say this. He had a really good rookie season. The problem was he was one of 4 running backs getting the ball, and that included veteran Freeman McNeil, who was a great player for them in the 80s. But he looked very good. He had 620 yards, and he averaged 5 yards a carry. In 1991, he ended up getting 728 yards, but he was also hampered by injuries, and his yards per carry came down dramatically. He never really did much after that season. He was considered a bust. He did play the 94 season, splitting between the Cowboys and the Patriots, and then went on to the Panthers in 95. But by then he was out of the league after that season. He ran for 2,200 yards. He had a 4.2 yard average per carry, but if you take out his rookie season, it was well under the 4 yards per carry, unfortunately. He was a part of the class of 1990. He had his score update pro set right here, mentioning right there with the draft. He also was one of the few rookies to get a collect-a-book card. We have the Fleer from Series 1, as well as Fleer Update. He also had a Rookies and Stars and Stripes card, and this really cool-looking Action Pack card as well. Now, there was another running back from that year who also did quite well, better than was expected. And that was Brad Baxter. He was a running back / fullback. And he was an 11th round pick by the Vikings in 1989 out of Alabama State, but he didn't make the team, and the Jets ended up signing him. He had 11 rushing touchdowns in 1991. I mean, he was really a good part of that Jets team. He was very productive. However, and there's a YouTube video of this. I will try to link the video to that because I watched this a while back. My memory may be a little foggy, but from what I remember, he was supposed to be at a mandatory training camp, and he missed it because he was a truck driver in the off-season. I think he was transporting cattle or something like that, and the Department of Transportation had ended up pulling him over or called him in, or I don't know, but they were working with him, and it took like a whole day for him to deal with all of that, and it made it so he missed the training camp. And I guess the coaches became very upset that he missed this camp, and he got in their doghouse and pretty soon was kind of off the team. So that was kind of an interesting story. I'll try to include a link to that if you guys want to check it out. But he ran for 3,000 yards and he had 35 touchdowns. Next up, we've got Dennis Byrd. This is his one and only rookie card. He was born in Oklahoma, and he was a 4-year starter at Tulsa, second-round draft pick back in '89. As a rookie, he had 7 quarterback sacks and was really showing promise. In 1990, he switched from defensive end to defensive tackle, and he had 13 quarterback sacks. He was a very big part of the New York defense. On October 29th, 1992, I remember this very vividly. It was a game against the Chiefs. He was going in to pressure Dave Craig, and he leapt towards him to try to get a quarterback sack. And Dave Craig stepped up and away, and so Byrd went right into his teammate Scott Merceau's chest and ended up breaking his neck. He became partially paralyzed. He couldn't walk. Just a very, very serious injury. But he was impressively able to walk again one day. Through a lot of hard work and physical therapy, he was able to do that. And in 1993, at the Jets' home opener, he walked to midfield as an honorary captain, and the crowd just gave him an ovation. And he was honored that day with his jersey, number 90, being retired. Now, it had not been worn since he had last played that game, but they officially retired it that day as well. They also gave him the Jets' Most Inspirational Player Award, and that award is now named after him. And now that I think about it, I think the Inspirational Player Award was what was given to him that day. I think his jersey was retired later on, a few years after that. But they did make a made-for-TV movie back in '94 called Rise and Walk, which is based on his book, and that was made for TV. And I remember watching it back in the day. I think I liked it, if I remember right. But he would go across the country as a motivational speaker, very inspirational person. Unfortunately, in October of 2016, Dennis Byrd was killed in a car crash in Oklahoma. There was a 17-year-old driver who had veered off into oncoming traffic and crashed into Byrd, and Byrd passed away, unfortunately. His younger son was in the car with him as well and was injured but did survive, thankfully. He was only 50 years old at the time, and he left behind a wife and 4 kids. And just a very inspirational player. Great story for him. Unfortunately, sad ending there, but he what an inspiration that he was able to walk again and help out a lot of people too. I'll go ahead and end with 2 very talented receivers for the Jets. The first one here is Rob Moore. These are his rookie cards. He had a 12-year career for the Jets and the Cardinals, and his best year was with the Cardinals in 1997 when he had 97 catches for 1,584 yards with 8 touchdowns. He was an All-Pro that year. I always associate him with Jerry Maguire. So the character played by Cuba Gooding Jr. in that movie, I can't remember the guy's name in the show, but anyway, that player, he played for the Cardinals and he wore number 85. And so in the movie, there's footage of Rob Moore of him playing, and that's the Gooding Jr. character. So I always, whenever I see Rob Moore, I think of that movie. He's currently the wide receivers coach of the Tennessee Titans. And then I almost threw him in there with Rob Moore, but here we go. This is Terence Mathis's one and only rookie card. Again, another player that just had one card made. He was a sixth-round draft pick in 90 out of New Mexico. He was an All-American there. He ended up having a 13-year career. His years with the Jets were more known for his return abilities as opposed to him as a receiver, but he was showing flashes of that too. He's best known, though, for his years with the Falcons, where he really was a wide receiver threat. He did spend his final year in 2002 with the Steelers, but his best year was 94. He was an All-Pro as well. Just like Rob Moore, he had an All-Pro year. With Atlanta, he had 111 catches, becoming the 8th player in NFL history to reach 100 or more catches. He had 1,300 yards receiving and 11 touchdowns. That was one of 4 1,000-yard seasons he had. He also scored a touchdown in Super Bowl 33. And in his career, both of these guys, had like 9,000 yards receiving. Mathis also had 63 receiving touchdowns. So a couple very talented receivers there for the New York Jets. All right, now I'm going to open this this pack of 90 tops like I usually do. I have one more after this for the final video, but I had totally forgotten last time. I had mentioned the Chicago Bears and Fred Washington. And this right here is an artwork that I did back in 1991, just as a tribute to him. And so I thought I'd show that to you guys since I have it here. This is with the colored pencil. But that is an old school work of art that I did for Fred Washington, kind of paying tribute to him from back in the day. All right, now let's go ahead and we'll do our Topps pack. I'd love to get a Junior Seau in one of these. I still have not done that in this video series. Piece of gum, still looking pretty good there. I'll go offer it to my girls after the video. All right, so we got Norm Johnson, Alfonso Carricker, Pierce Holt, Mark Wilson, 1-in-15 team that year, Brian Sosha, the late great Reggie Roby, the late great Reggie White, that's a nice one, Ricky Sanders, 1,000-yard club. And I will mention, after my next show and tell video, I'll be doing the USFL throwbacks, and he was a part of that. So I'm excited to make those videos. There's Freeman McNeil, Gary Anderson, All-Pro Sean Farrell, Mike Kofer, Henry Ellard, who's awesome. Hey, there's a Barry Foster rookie. That's a pretty good one. He had a couple great years. Eddie Brown and Steve DeBerg. I was a fan of his. I really liked Steve DeBerg quite a bit. He played forever, yeah. So card of the pack right there, Reggie White, my late brother Brad's favorite player of all time. Always love getting some Reggie cards. Again, USFL, there we go, USFL Reggie White. Okay, so that will do it for today. Want to thank everybody for being a part of the show and tell video. So we'll have one more left, which will include the Falcons and the Cowboys. So some good rookie cards in there. So anyway, there we go. We've got the 1990 show and tell. I appreciate you guys sticking with me. I know these are longer videos, so there's got to be a real love for the hobby there for sticking with me, so I appreciate that. All right, everybody, take care, and I will be back with more videos in the near future. As always, go Bears.